right, so here we have the Mars 5 Ultra. This is a pretty unique printer that's made resin printing much easier now, as it introduces some very special features. So right off the bat, we can see the Ultra comes in this darkened kind of look. We have an upper cover that has pretty awesome designs on it. It says 05 here, ELEGOO Mars, and over here in very small letters it says create the future, innovation at your fingertips. We got more wording here. The beautiful vertical screen, 5 inches, great resolution. Going to the right side of the printer, we have ports and buttons, the USB port, power switch, DC input, and the Wi-Fi antenna, the little venting on top. Going to the other side, we just have some venting, and below that we can see we're sitting on 4 rubber feet. And on the very back, it's quite clean. We do have the manufacturing label here with some information. The top cover comes off as one piece, and it does have a nice groove that it seals onto the base. And also on the back of it, here we can see that you can connect an external vent, like a hose or a pipe, to vent out the resin smells. So the 5 Ultra really has some unique things, but we'll start here on the top with this latching mechanism. So this is something new here, and it's literally like a latch that you open, and then your bed just slides out, which is awesome and quite easy to use and feels a lot more secure instead of the older ball type of connection. Here everything is kind of more covered up. See our lead screw in the middle, and we got one linear route. We got a pretty beefy C channel for the x-axis. Going back to the build plate, it's quite unique also. The top here is plasticky, so this portion here does not go into the resin, as we have these little extensions that go to the plate. And this whole system here is somewhat dynamic, as it does have springs in it. If I push it, you can probably see it kind of move a little bit. So the idea here is that the bed goes down and the resin never goes above here. We do still have a taper, which is nice. And going down from there, we have the vat, which holds the resin. It's connected with these 2 bolts that you just unscrew, and they do come out completely. And it's a pretty decent size here. We got a pour spout on both ends, which is nice. The max line and a very clear film. And also if we flip around completely, maybe you guys can tell, but we have little feet as bolts. So you can set it down like this without touching the film. We do have a 9K resolution display. We also have tilt technology, which this whole piece here, you guys can kind of see the crack, actually moves up and down or side to side. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it does move the vat down as it's going through layers, and we'll see that as it's operating. But that's like the main feature that really helps with speed and releasing from the film as the vat goes down, not just this moving up and down. So yeah, that's pretty unique. Now we do also have this pretty cool little AI camera, and this helps you monitor the print / it does have smart features. If something goes wrong or is off, with the help of AI, determined if there's issues. It is mounted here where it looks diagonally straight through the center, and it's a pretty awesome feature, as this printer does connect to Wi-Fi, so you should be able to control and see everything from your slicer. So we have some different materials here. It looks like metal mixed with plastic, but overall the build quality seems quite solid. Going to our screen, the software is excellent, and we can see here this is where we're going to connect to Wi-Fi, and I'm going to go ahead and log in. Click enter. All right, so we are connected to Wi-Fi. So it looks like right away it determined that it wants to update to a newer version. So let's go ahead and do that. And now it's updating with the progress bar. So yeah. And another thing I didn't mention yet is the build volume is actually quite reasonable for being a smaller printer. It's actually 6 inches wide, 3 inches deep, and 6.5 inches tall of print volume, which is quite a decent size, and we can kind of see it here on our build plate, which also reminds me to show you guys that the build plate is actually etched. So there's a pattern in it. So it has like a little bit of roughness to it where the print can actually stick. And so here we are finished with the update, and it's asking us to reboot the machine manually, which we'll do here by turning it off, wait a few seconds, and then power back on. And it looks like it's finishing up the update. All right, so it's done, and actually it's asking us to reboot it again. Just kind of interesting, but how we can confirm there, and looks like we're pretty much good to go. So in the tools, we have a manual move. You guys can see we can move it up and down. We got LCD exposure, which tests the screen. So if we click here on the grid, we can see there's a grid, so there's lights, and there's actually a picture we can see. So everything is functioning correctly. We have tank clean, and this is just gonna open up the whole thing completely, and you guys can see just wide open. We have emergency stop button. We got the self-test and resin calibration. So the self-test, it kind of does in the beginning. You guys can see all of these things that it checks, including actually, I think it does move the vat here. Yeah, you guys can see it's going down. So it's a pretty unique thing to see for sure. Oh yeah, it's actually tilting. I could see that the front went down more than the back. Pretty cool. And yeah, you guys can see it does all of these things here. So. And here we have resin calibration, and here, this is a specialized test that you can do to calibrate your printer. As you print out different exposures at the same time and see what's best. Click confirm, then here you guys can see we have the different choices. So in the settings, you can change your language, your app settings, so you can turn the sound on and off, format the files, export error log, restore the factory settings, and temperature unit, so you can change this to Fahrenheit if you wanted to, but yeah, we'll keep it on Celsius as that's what we're all used to here. And another thing that's quite important to note is that this printer is completely automatic when it comes to leveling the build plate. So it uses, I guess, the combination of the tilting screen there and this being somewhat flexible to correctly align itself flat. So yeah, that's a really nice feature and takes away another thing that you don't have to worry about with this printer. You just have the vat on, secure it down, pour your resin in, and you're ready to print. As simple as that. And if we plug in the included thumb drive here on the side, you guys can see it blinks. Go to print, USB, and we can see we have a test print and also some software, slicing software. And it's the famous root that comes with all ELEGOO printers. And so naturally for the next part, we want to put in some resin. Here I have some water washable in ceramic gray. And you want to mix up your resin really good, new or old, but don't violently shake it. Just kind of twirl it around for a bit where all the polymers mix up. And this is probably a good time to talk about the safety. So since we're using water washable with not as, I guess, powerful as, let's say, regular resin would be. And this is why I choose to normally use water washables, as it's a little more friendly. But you want to make sure you wear protection on your hands, which gloves are included, as we see here, and also some masks. And another thing to consider is make sure you're in a very open environment where there's airflow. So preferably like in a garage or somewhere where air can be recycled quickly. But yeah, let's go ahead and pour resin in here. And we're going to go to the max line, as this printer is smart enough to know how far the resin goes up. So if you put too much, it's going to give you an error. And if you don't have enough, it actually knows that too, and it'll stop the print and tell you to add more. So I think I'm gonna stop right there, just right below the mark. And you guys can see we do have a little bit of bubbles, which is okay. They'll kind of go away, and they're all at the top, not a big deal. So we can go ahead and start our first print, which is this little root that was included. We'll click on print, and it starts. And right away this thing tilts. You guys can see maybe or not. So it's actually checking some stuff, looks like. It's saying that the mechanical sensor is being calibrated. And now our Z-axis is going down. All right, so it just barely touched the top, which is interesting. It's not dunking, there it goes, now it's dunking in. But yeah, it looks like it's started. And here on the screen, it's actually saying it's out of leveling right now. So, and I can actually see this was kind of moving up and down there. All right, so it looks like now we started. And we can see there we're on the 0% on our first layer, looks like. There's our exposures there, the model height and where the print's at. Okay, so it just did its first layer, I heard it. And the bed actually went down and that went up. And we also, looks like our recording, because it says record there with the camera. So let's see, can we change anything? All right, so these are just parameters, but there are buttons here. So it looks like settings, pause, stop, and I'm not sure exactly what that means, but let's click on settings here. All right, so we got two bottom layer counts, normal layer, bottom transition layers, transition type, and bottom layer height. So here we have exposure, looks like, yep. And then more settings. Okay, so we got print mode, high speed or lower speeds. So yeah, we do have some adjustments there, which is really nice. All right, so it looks like it's boogieing along and it's tilting for sure. There it goes. So it actually tilts the front. Very cool. And then the Z-axis just moves up whatever it needs for the next layer, looks like. Definitely a different way of doing it. So we can see we got a little bit of UV light bleed there on the side, but it actually looks pretty cool. And yeah, it's boogieing along, and you can kind of hear some crunchy sound as it peels off and then starts printing again. And you guys can probably tell maybe the reason you can't put much more resin in there is because when it tilts, it really goes to the limit. So yeah, right off the bat, very nice and quiet and quite interesting to look at. And we can also tell that our screen has changed to like this different view here, where it kind of shows us the percentage in big font, has this cool little animation, and our file name, and then the layers that are finished, which is 22, and the layers left. And if you just tap anywhere, it goes back to this menu. So, and I think this button here is what switches in between. All right, guys, so the Rook is printing along and everything's good. But what I want to do is I want to try. Okay, so the screen also dims down, as you guys saw there, to pause it and see if we can see if our model is stuck on there. So let's go ahead and click the pause button. It wants to confirm, we'll say yes. And look at that, it's all coming up. And the VAT actually went up too. And sure enough, we can see our print under there. And it definitely goes up high enough for you to see. So now all we gotta do is push play or continue here, and it should start printing or continue printing where it left off. And there it goes. Super cool. So if you want to check, you know, if your print is stuck after a few layers, like maybe 50 or something, you can pause it and see if it's under there and everything's good. But yeah, looks like the 5 Ultra here has no issues whatsoever with sticking, and all the automatic bed leveling and whatnot else it uses to have the perfect first layer, it seems to be working. All right, so our first print is done. I have a few things here. I got a sheet with some stuff in it and also some water here. So you do want to put on some protective gloves to protect your skin from the resin. Also use your mask. I like to have a rag around, and 3 tools, which is a couple scrapers. This is not the one that comes with it. It's just the one I use, but it is metal, and this one here is plastic. So the plastic is going to be working in the vat, and the metal one is going to be working on the plate or scraping the models off the plate. And the little brush helps us clean the model. So let's go ahead and push this back a bit. We'll unhook the bed. Slide it out. Well, actually, I just forgot something that's quite important, and it's in this box, and it's actually a drip tray. So this thing does come with the printer, and you guys can see it kind of has like little hooks here that go around the bolts, kind of like that. And so whenever you take this off, you're not gonna accidentally drip it onto the front here or the screen, and that's a really nice little addition. So now let's go ahead and take it off. So now when we do this, we can potentially have drips like we are having now, you can see, and it's dripping into the pan instead of, you know, all over the printer. So now we'll go down to the sheet, and hopefully you guys can see it's stuck really good to the textured plate. Well, let's see how easy it comes off. So I'm gonna grab the metal spatula, see if we can't break it loose. So I would say this held on a little better than I would want. And they probably sliced the test model, you know, to stick better than normal, as, you know, your first model should always stick, right? Now, because we're going to continue printing, I just slid this thing back on and latched it. But if you were to clean it, you would just wash it in water, since we're using water washable resin, and it's actually pretty easy to wash. Same thing for the tank. You would just empty it out or recycle it back into the bottle, straining it through a filter, and then washing the tank out. And that's what makes water washables pretty easy and fun, and they do have less odor. So now let's bring our water in here. And I probably should have had the glove on the other side, so now I'm gonna have to use my left hand with the brush. But yeah, we're just gonna duck it into the water. And you guys can maybe see it's starting to shed the excess pretty quickly. And we can take a brush and actually brush it to get more detail, but we have to be very careful, and you have to have a very soft brush not to ruin the texture of the model, as it is pretty soft, as it hasn't cured at all yet. But yeah, what I noticed, if you just slightly brush it over detailed items like words, letters, or anything that needs to be more sharp, that really helps a lot. And better yet, if you are going to do resin printing consistently as a hobby or whatnot else, you probably want to get a wash and cure station, as that would make your life a lot easier. But I noticed that curing models is actually better just naturally letting them dry, and then set them somewhere next to UV light or in a bright room, but not in direct sunlight, as direct sunlight could actually damage it, because it'll, you know, try to dry it too fast and the UV is too strong. So we're just gonna let this thing cure, and we'll see it here in a bit as we print more models, and we'll check them all out here in a bit. All right, so here we are at the computer and I got the thumb drive plugged in. Let's go ahead and open it up. So this is what we see. Looks like we have a couple PDFs and they are of the manual in digital form. And we can see here everything that's included, all the parts of the printer and what they're called. We got the specifications here, how to use the printer and get started here, and also the slicer, which we're about to do. So here we have another PDF in multilingual, which basically has more languages added here to it. So here we have a printing test file, and that's the ROOC we printed, which comes with the STL, and also the GOO file, which is the sliced file. And here we have another folder which appears to have more chest pieces that you could print if you want. And for the last file, we have the slicing software, which includes the basic and the pro G2 box. So the printer does come with a pro subscription. There's a card in the box with a code, but we're going to stick to the basic today. And when we click on that, we can see we have 3 different systems available: Linux, Mac, and Windows. Same thing for the pro. I'm on Mac, so we're going to choose that. So they have 2 different folders here for the Mac, as one is for the older ones that still use Intel chips, and then the one is for the new one, which uses the ARM chip. So the one with the A here is the ARM, and the one with the I is the Intel. So I still have the older Mac, so I'm gonna choose the I for Intel. So it's gonna go ahead and install and open up here shortly. All right, so here we have a welcome to G2 box. They have a little wizard here that you can go through, which will help you get started. I guess let's go ahead and do that real quick. So choose your language. You got English. Next step, choose the interface that you would like. So they got classic, light, and this one. I guess we'll try this new one out. And here we're gonna add the machine. And here we have the Mars 5 Ultra. Finish. So it kind of wants us to go over here and make sure everything is correct. So we're just going to leave everything the way it is and not mess with anything. And you can see here we're under the machine settings. And we got Resin here, print, and you can adjust your parameters, and advanced. So I guess it's all in one. It's just going through the different tabs. Okay, we're going to apply that. It's telling us here that make sure we have the latest update to our printer to work with this slicer. So let's just cancel that for now. And here we go. We can see our build plate. Very nice interface. I like the dark background. And it also shows us where the front is on the build plate, which is pretty awesome. So even if you can imagine this being upside down, you can still see where the front is. So let's go ahead and drag something in here like this Eiffel Tower. Right off the bat, we can see here we have a cavity detector saying that there needs to be a hole dug because there's a resin that will not flow out, I guess. But we should be fine, I think, with this tower, as it's supposed to be printed the way it is. So we'll just turn that off. And we can see here we have 2 detectors, the cavity and the collision detector. The collision one's happy. So we have all our basics here. We can move the model around by just clicking it, or using the arrows, or just putting in here with the measurements. We also reset it here, put on plate, centered. Here we have rotate, also same thing. We can rotate it here just by clicking the circles, or doing it here in the interface. Here we have scale, which we can make it smaller or bigger in every direction. Ratio locked, support diameter unchanged. But let's go ahead and click the scale to fit, and that's just gonna maximize the model to fit on our build plate. So this is the maximum it can print. Yeah, it's not huge, obviously, but it is a reasonable amount, and it's giving us a Z of a maximum of 149.92, so 150. And down here we can do more things to mirror the print. So on top here we have files we can open, auto layout, hollow, dig hole. So if you want to make it the model hollow here, it kind of shows the preview, or like dig a hole because you want to drain the resin, or just, you know, punch a hole through something. And we also have a repair button here to repair issues with the model. Here we have our navigation, where you can just kind of click on certain parts of the cube. Here we have layers for each one, and there are 3,000 of them here, which is quite a few. So if we go back up here, we can see we have a couple tabs. We're on this first tab. If we go to the second tab, that's going to be actually our supports, and it automatically here pulls up what kind of supports and to fine tune them. So you can do all your supports from here. This model obviously does not require support, but if you click this auto support button here, it does a pretty good job of just automatically putting the supports where they're needed. But this is definitely, you know, a little more on the advanced side, and takes a little time to learn how to use supports. But overall, the auto support button does a great job, and you can delete and add supports manually here with these buttons. But we're going to keep it pretty simple today and just do this Eiffel Tower. So if you're ready to slice, you're going to click the slice button here, and it's going to slice the model. And here we can see our exposure time, 2.5, and bottom exposure is 32 seconds, which is probably a little high because our other model was sticking too good. So let's make it 25 seconds, and we'll go a little faster of 2.2 seconds per a layer. that should be quite reasonable. So down here we can see we can save the file or network sending. So if our printer is connected to the network, we can send it here. But let's click on save, and you guys can see that we'll be able to save this file straight to the computer. So we do have a couple choices here of GOO or CTB. Pretty sure we need GOO, so I'm going to click on that. But it might be able to read both of those. So, and this is going to save it straight to our desktop. And from here we can actually put it on our thumb drive and then take it to the printer and print it out. And for whatever reason, it does take a while to save here. We're only at 30%. So I'm just going to cancel that. Also show you guys here, you can send it by network. And to do that, we actually need to install some kind of Box manager. I guess let's go ahead and do that. And that looks like it's going to take a while. All right, so we downloaded. It looks like there's a few steps here to go through. So we got an introduction, continue, install software. Successful. So theoretically should work now. Let's click on network sending. I guess we need to allow here, and yeah, it's opening up a different window here. And here looks like we can add a printer. Let's see, add. So it looks like it found this one here, which is our Mars 5 Ultra. All right. So if we go to printer, we can see it's on idle. Let's click on it here. Camera is connected, it says so. And there it goes. We can actually see the VAT there live. And that's a separate window also, which is kind of cool, I guess. You can keep that open. And it's actually pretty clear, very high quality camera. All right, so we connected the printer. Let's go ahead and send it to this one here. And if we click on send, looks like it's uploading the file to the printer, and it should start printing. Here we can see it's transferring, completed. And as simple as that, we sent the print to the printer. So here from the G2 manager, we can actually, let's see the files. Internal storage, and there's our Eiffel Tower, and we can print it from here. So it does require a little bit of clicking around and getting it to work. So if we click here on print, it's going to say our time lapse is off. Actually, go ahead and turn it on here and click on print, making sure that everything is good to go. We'll click continue, and the print actually started. I can hear the printer's doing things, and I guess we can open up our camera here, and there we can see the build plate is actually moving around. So my lighting is probably not too optimal there for the camera, as it's very bright up front and dark on the backside. But still very, very good picture there, or live feed. And there it goes. Pretty awesome. And that's basically the G2 slicer here with G2 manager to access the printer through the network. And if we click here, we can see we open more details here of what's happening. It says it's printing 0%, and it looks like we are on our first layer there. So yeah, very nice slicer. It's not super quick on my computer, as it's a bit laggy. It's probably because of the Intel processor and whatever software they're using, but overall very polished and a great experience here. So one of the great features of this printer is if we go to tools, swipe over, here we can see it says resin calibration. So this is going to give us the ability to print out multiple models on the same plate with different settings of exposure time. And if we click here in the middle, we can see we can have up to 8 on the plate. So I think we're going to do maybe 6, probably even 4 is fine. So let's stick with 6. So next we're going to need to use a file. So I already sent one from the slicer. So we're going to click on the plus, local storage, and here we have the Amelia Labs calibration model. We'll click import, and so here it automatically gives us the 6 different settings for each model that varies from 3.5 seconds all the way down to 1.8 seconds. So this should give us a good idea of where we should be at. So let's go ahead and click play and then print. It's saying here that you cannot change anything while it's printing. It's just going to do its thing. And there it goes. So once it prints all these out, I'll wash them up, have them cure for a bit, and we'll take a closer look of which one we should print at. And by the way, it is showing us here that it's going to take about 48 minutes to get this done for this model here. All right, so we printed some resin calibration prints out, as you guys can see here, and I went ahead and washed it, and it's somewhat dried, and I don't want to pull it off as I'm thinking I'm probably going to destroy them and we won't be able to see them very well. But this was actually more difficult, I guess, than I thought it would be. Not only do you have to slice the models in this configuration, depending on how many, blocks you choose, but on top of that, it's confusing which one is which, as if when they're like this upside down, the one starts from here and goes this way to 3, then 4, 5, 6. So then when you flip them over, you get confused, and plus the screen doesn't really match up too well with how that all is. It's just confusing, seems like. So I'm not even 100% sure if I did it right or not, but it did print out, which is kind of cool. And I guess my only complaint would be that it would be much easier to understand how to do this process. And probably labeling the models, actually having something on them would help. And also I did change the exposure times from 2.3 all the way down to 1.6, but mostly we have 2.0 and up gradually 0.1 after that to 0.3, so we got more of those than the other ones. And here you guys hopefully can see, let's see, so one is this one here, so we got 1, 2, 3, and then it jumps back to 4, 5, 6. It's going to be very hard to show you guys, as probably would need a macro lens. After looking at these very closely, I came to the conclusion that the 2.0 and the 2.1 were the best settings for the resin that I have in the tub right now. So it is going to depend on the resin you use, obviously. But what's great, it wasn't a huge variation between the two. The lower exposure did slightly look sloppy, but that was like the other end. And the higher exposure, which was only 2.3, not that high, you could kind of see the layer lines a little more, and it seemed to be a little rougher looking, I guess would be the best way to explain it. But yeah, this is a pretty nice feature, again, that needs to be refined. And I'm guessing the way it works is it probably just blocks out the part of the screen depending on the exposure length, and that's why you can do different blocks and sections of the 6 different models. So yeah, I guess the takeaway here is nice that ELEGOO is pushing innovation here into resin printing by having resin calibration integrated in the printer. All right, so these are all the prints we printed on the Mars 5 Ultra. And the thing that really stands out with this printer is the ease of use and how refined it is, which gives you quite a premium experience. So we have quite a few prints here. I use 2 types of resin. You can see the darker and the lighter. They're both water washables. And before we started looking at them closer, the one thing that was absolutely an issue for me with this printer was that all the prints stuck too well to the build plate. And so when I first started, I had a hard time pulling the prints off, as our bottom layer exposure was at like 30 seconds or so. And eventually I got down all the way to 4 seconds where I can actually pull the prints off. I'm not sure if this is just my situation, but if you're having sticking issues like I did, where it sticks too well, try bringing the bottom layer exposure down to 5 seconds or under. And also I only had 2 bottom layers. So yeah, sticking too well to the build plate is a good thing, but not so great when you can't pop the models off without breaking them. Now, if you use supports, obviously that's not a big of a deal. Most of these prints I printed were without supports, which was why it was more of an issue. But with that said, let's take a look at our first print here, which is this Rook. And this thing came with the printer, and you guys can see it looks very nice. So the bottom looks good. There's a little bit of air pockets there, but other than that, it's pretty good looking. It actually did come off reasonably well, the small chip. And there is no elephant foot, so it does a very good job leveling itself, the platform. And if you guys can see, hopefully here, that the quality is very nice. and you can see the letters there inside. Very crisp and pretty much perfect. And again, all of this resin that we use is water washable, which is quite easy to use and very friendly. It does warp a little more, but for more general printing, water washable resin looks really good. So here we have an Ameri Labs test print. This was printed by itself earlier, and you guys can see there's a ton of detail in there. So we can't really see this, you know, without having a macro lens, but whatever you guys can see there, I can tell you that it's really, really good. And the resolution and detail on this printer is astonishingly high. So we have a print here that's elf bust, I think is what it's called. And yeah, we can see there's a lot of detail in this print. And this is one solid piece. I didn't hollow it out or anything. And this did use supports. Most of them were towards the back. They cleaned up very well on just automatic. You can kind of see a couple here and there. Didn't clean out completely, but yeah, just quickly pulled them off. This is what it looks like. So yeah, even the automatic supports do an excellent job, and the cleanup is very minimal. And this whole thing here was under supports, and you guys can see it kind of warped there. But yeah, the details are incredible again. And this is without any kind of anti-aliasing or anything else smoothing. This is just normal profile print, and the prints come out very smooth and very sharp. So here we have a pretty cute print, which is a bear, and this also turned out perfect. It actually looks very smooth. This resin actually has a little sheen to it. It almost looks like pearl in a way. You guys can see even after it cleans up, it does have a shine to it. There's no faults whatsoever here, and it looks perfect. Except for when we go to the bottom, we can see there's some residue from the build plate. Again, the build plate sticks too well, and this is a print that was towards the end with the exposure times turned way down. So yeah. The next one we got here is quite large. It's also very detailed, and I'm not sure if the lighting is going to do very well on this lighter color, but you guys can see, and plus it's kind of shiny, which is not so good for detail, but yeah, you guys can see the detail is all there. And it did extremely well towards the top. I did punch a hole on top of his head to drain resin out. It is hollowed out. The only issue that we kind of had was towards the bottom a little bit, but on the back you guys can see it's quite smooth for being, you know, shiny also. The tilting mechanism seems to be very accurate. We did have some kind of layer here though, but other than that, it's quite a large print and pretty much perfect. And I did break it off, pulling it off, but still very happy with the results. And again, it did take me a while to figure out that I need to bring the exposure down on the first layers. So this next print here is quite incredible, as it's a flowery petally thing. It's quite thin and somewhat fragile, I guess. But yeah, the thing to take away here is each petal is perfectly separated, and it all printed out to perfection, as you guys can see. So yeah, even going straight to the middle there, pretty much perfect. It did start to curl a little bit there, but overall a beautiful print and quite incredible what resin printers can put out. So here we have a pretty fun one, and this print will show how well the layers go down because the body is very smooth, and you guys can see it's pretty much perfect. Beautiful print here. Again, this resin does have a shine to it, but you guys can see very, very consistent layers. On the bottom of his feet, we can see where, again, it's stuck too well, which is interesting. Peeling the coating off of the build plate. And going up to the face and then the antlers, just incredible how detailed and perfect it came out. So yeah, and these are, you know, quite strong. They won't just break. Well, it depends on the resin also, but very nice print. Lots of accuracy and smooth, consistent layering. And here we have a print which is called a droid, I think. It's kind of like a lizard, and it's completely perforated, but the quality, guys, is just incredible on this thing. Very clean and smooth, and looks great. Now, this print here was a good example of sticking too well. It's our feet or paws kind of broke off there. Other than that, it did turn out very well, and it looks excellent. Now here we have a pretty incredible print, which is only possible on a printer like this. And this is called, I think, a neuron. And so this is just a bunch of webs that go through the whole thing to have this much intertwining connections. And, you know, they're all kind of wiggly and not completely straight. And it all combines together. Is quite incredible. So if I can find the bottom, here we go. So the bottom is easily found with, again, residue from the build plate coming off. And I did kind of break it off a bit here as I was trying to pull it off. But yeah, awesome print. Again, an excellent job for the 5 Ultra. So here we have an Eiffel Tower. This is one of the first prints we printed. This thing turned out excellent for the most part. So if we look at the bottom, you guys can see I broke up 2 of the legs trying to get it off. Surprisingly, the other 2 came off okay. But if we look at the details, especially this railing here. It's pretty much perfection, guys. Incredible detail. You can see through all of these here. Hopefully I can line it up where you guys can see. And even going to the very top there, everything is see-through, even that fine mesh right there, which will be very hard to see. But yeah, incredible resolution, and everything feels very sturdy and bonded very well together. And also, by the way, guys, this is the full height, or at least the fit to scale that it gave me on the slicer for the full height that I could print. So yeah, you guys can see this is a pretty incredible printer. I was pretty impressed with how far ELEGOO is pushing the technology, especially with the tub moving with the tilt release is quite incredible. It makes a lot of sense. The auto leveling system seems to work well. We also have a smart mechanical sensor that senses if anything is wrong during the print process. We also get an AI camera that is great for monitoring the print. Also, it is smart, so if it sees anything wrong, it should alert. We do have Wi-Fi connection, which is great to interact with the printer from your slicer on the computer. We got an excellent vertical touchscreen, 5 inches, very clear and high resolution. And this being the Mars edition, it is on the smaller side of our build volume, being 218 wide, 88 deep, and 220 tall, which is actually pretty good size, and with full confidence recommend this printer to anyone that's just getting started. So if you haven't gotten into resin printing and you want to, this would be an excellent machine to start with. Very easy to use, straightforward, prints water washable resin very well, has all the features that you would want, and has pretty much everything you need to get started. And not to mention, being an ultra model, it's priced very well for everything you get. So if you are interested in the Mars 5 Ultra, I'll have some links in the description. Check it out. If you did enjoy this video, then hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, check out my 3D printing playlist. I'm sure you'll find something interesting there. And also stay tuned for more, as we got interesting things coming up. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.